were invited by the Japanese Automobile Federation to enter the 1969 JAF Grand Prix. The offer was extremely attractive, and so we decided to have a go. We entered both our cars to be driven by Kevin Bartlett and Max Stewart, took our three mechanics, Glenn Abbey, Bob Grange and Ian Gordon. Merv Wackett and his wife came along to keep an eye on his engine in our Formula 2 car. In fact, our party was almost enough to take advantage of a group booking, so we invited the other Australian contestants to join us. Leo Gagan and Glenn Scott made up the numbers. We flew by Philippine Airlines, who gave us a comfortable and enjoyable trip both ways. Leo Gagan brought his mechanic and a spare engine. As events turned out, he could have left his spare engine behind and brought his wife instead, but he was not to know this beforehand. The cars were flown by Qantas the following day. We chose Qantas because they had pallet loading facilities which save us the trouble of dismantling the cars. The Qantas porters were fascinated by the racing cars, and each car on a pallet was lifted into the cargo section of the aircraft on the hydraulic lift. The car was then pushed into the compartment and tied down on a waiting pallet. The JAF found accommodation for our party at a modern westernised hotel at Gotemba, some 14 miles from the circuit. It was a pleasant place and very comfortable. In the background, Mount Fuji. The next day, we travelled by coach to have a look at the circuit. The Fuji International Speedway is some 80 miles from Tokyo by high-speed motorway. We had the circuit to ourselves that day and found the superb facilities included lock-up garages in the pit area. Bob and Glenn checked the cars over before our private practice run. Our mechanics worked hard and long hours during the next 3 days. In the meantime, we went for a tour around the track. At the end of the long pit straight is a curved downhill drop banked to 30 degrees. Our cars would come into this corner at about 180 miles per hour. At the bottom of the hill is a sharp right-hander to bring us back below the pits. Then another sharp left-hander takes us further round the course. We come into a 120 mile an hour right-hander, which brought us back into the 1.25 mile long pit straight. The next day was official scrutineering and practice. The officials were smartly turned out in pale mauve jackets. Number 24 is a factory-entered Formula 2 Colt. Number 17 is a Bartlett Olivetti Special. The scrutineering was remarkably thorough. We had no trouble and found the officials most courteous and helpful. Much to our surprise, they even weighed our cars, and to our delight, we found we had the lightest 2.5 litre and Formula 2 cars. To complete the inspection, they even have a pit so that they may inspect underneath the cars. After the inspections, they fueled our cars from a portable Bowser. Finally, the seals are placed on the cars and we are allowed to return to the pits. On race day, we travelled to the course by coach again, but this time we had a police escort to get us through the overcrowded roads. 62,000 people came to watch the racing. The pits were more crowded on race day and included the inevitable Japanese wrestler. The cars are wheeled out for final inspection, and this formality went on for hours. In first practice the day before, Bartlett had set fastest time of 1 minute 55.39, but then blew a hole in one of the pistons. Our mechanics worked half the night to replace the engine. Fortunately, we had taken the spare engine with us. Gagan managed a 1 minute 54.13, second fastest of the day. Gary Cooper did a 1 minute 54.7, which also put him on the front row. Fastest time of the day in the second session was local hero Tetsu Ikazawa in the Formula 2 Colt with a 1 minute 53.81, which put him in pole position. Although Bartlett had no further practice that day, his time secured him the fourth place on the front row of the 4-3-4 grid. Stewart had pole on second row. The photographers are allowed in the pits for the first time, and they make a beeline for our cars. During practice, we all had to modify our suspension settings to allow for the 30-degree curved, banked track. The Subaru Special had unusual air intake pipes for the carburetors. Must have been a fresh air fiend. Tetsu Ikazawa is the Japanese champion. His car featured an unusually large oil cooler. Things began to wind up a little when the international drivers were called upon to join in a grand parade. Headed by a group of Boy Scouts, our men tagged along a little sheepishly, wondering what was going to happen next. The ceremony started off with a bang. And then went on with the speeches of welcome to all and sundry. The Anzac team seemed to tower over the local drivers. Now we could get down to the serious business of motor racing. Team tactics were all important, as the race was a long one. 40 laps of nearly 4-mile course, over 150 miles, much longer than our drivers were used to doing. Leo Gagan's ready smile and the friendly approach quickly made him popular with the local press. The Sydney Morning Herald's man in Tokyo, Max Such, came along to find out what we were up to. Ikazawa's colt waits patiently for the race. Gary Cooper's new Elfin 600 was fitted with a Repco V8. At long last, we could roll the cars out for a warm-up lap. Max Stewart looks determined as he gloves up. I was pretty busy too. Kevin Bartlett adjusts his mask. At long last, we can try our cars for size. After the warm-up lap, the cars are assembled on the grid. And the drivers have to get out again for a meeting with the clerk of course. I wonder whether the tyres are going to last the distance. The last few minutes always seem the longest as our drivers wait for the start. This fellow must have been with the ballet company. Stand by. flags down. Away they go. A beautiful start. Cooper just gets the edge on Bartlett as they accelerate down the straight. Cooper's just leading, but watch Ikazawa cut the corner and jump the queue down the chute. Gary Cooper lost it on the next bend, and now Ikazawa is in front, followed by Max Stewart, Bartlett and Gagan. Into the left-hander underneath the pits, Ikazawa leads Stewart, Bartlett and Gagan. Second time round, and Stewart follows the wily Ikazawa, who ought to know his way round his home circuit. Gagan is third, Matsuko in the second works Formula 2 Colt fourth, and slowing down to fifth place, Bartlett. Next time round, Stewart passes Ikazawa, only to be repassed further down the straight. Now Bartlett's in trouble, and he wheels the car in, suffering from loss of power. Another piston is holed, and that's the end of his effort for the day. With Kevin Bartlett out of the race, Max Stewart keeps up the good work with a tremendous dice with Ikazawa. Ikazawa dives into the near side lane to keep in the lee of the wind. Stewart tucks in for the toe. They pass and repass, much to the huge delight of the crowd. Ikazawa knows his way round for sure, but he cannot shake off the determined Max. Ikazawa is leading, Max is in second place. Now Max Stewart is in front again. They keep up the spirited dice for the next few laps, but on the 10th lap, Ikazawa lost steam and came into the pits to change his plugs. He came out again but retired soon after with a faulty ignition. This gave Max the lead, and he continued to enjoy his moments of glory. The engine was running crisply and he was lapping in steady 1 minute 55s. However, Gagan was now moving up and getting ready to pounce. He had started slowly to avoid stripping his new gears and had driven quietly round, waiting for the opposition to fall by the wayside. He was lying fourth in the first 2 laps and had moved up a couple of places as first Bartlett and then Ikazawa dropped out. On the 16th lap, Gagan overtook Stewart and from then on led all the way. Stewart tried to keep up with him at first, until we signalled him to ease off. There was no point in letting Max stay up with Gagan. Even a good 1600 can't beat a good 2.5 litre. We just had to settle for second place and hope nothing broke. In the meantime, Glyn Scott was leading Cato in another Formula 2 Colt. The Cosworth FVA seemed to have the edge on the Mitsubishi engine. All went well until the 25th lap, when Max came in with his radiator empty. We had to take our time refilling the water as the engine was stove hot. Then, of all the rotten luck, the starter motor wouldn't work. When it finally decided to turn, the motor fired immediately. Although we had lost 8 laps, Stewart went out to qualify as a finisher. There was nothing wrong with Merv Waggett's engine. In fact, it was going better than ever. In his last lap, Max Stewart did his fastest lap and set a new lap record for Formula 2 cars for the course. He got it down to 1 minute 54.2, an average speed of 116 miles an hour on the 3.7 mile track. In the closing laps, Gagan maintained his lead, and Rowley Levis had now fitted nicely into second slot. Glyn Scott seemed to fade a little in the last few laps and was overtaken by Cato in the Formula 2 Colt. It was a much longer race than we'd been used to, with 40 laps totalling 150 miles, taking nearly an hour and 20 minutes. The last seconds are ticking by. Here he comes. And the flagman goes out to wave the winner in. Down on the trackside, we wait for Leo to come in after his well-deserved win. Gagan comes in after winning the 1969 Japanese Grand Prix in record time, followed here by Cato in the Formula 2 Colt, and Max Stewart having done a good job despite his troubles. Gagan set a new lap record of 1 minute 52.69, an average of 119.7 miles per hour. On the rostrum, Gagan is top of the pile, with second placeman Rowley Levis on his left and third placeman Sohei Cato on his right. Down on the tarmac, we discuss the features of the race with our crew. An interesting point about the event was that we had to fit starter motors to our cars in order to comply with the regulations. The Japanese Automobile Federation were running their Grand Prix according to accepted international regulations. Australia must be the last country in the world where push starting is still allowed. Now that we have our starter motors fitted, we might as well keep them on for future use. But for the starter motor trouble on Max's car, we might have been better placed. We had time to reminisce on our return journey with Philippine Airlines. It had been a wonderful experience for all of us. We went together as a team. We probably helped each other more than ever before. As an Australian and New Zealand team, we were successful in collecting first, second and fourth places in the JAF Grand Prix. Altogether, it was a very successful trip to Japan, and we are hoping to be invited there again. The Mount Fuji Motor Raceway is magnificent with excellent facilities for spectator and competitors alike.